Hello, my name is Max. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. I will be presenting our CSCW 2021 paper called What is the topic of the group, please? And even though I'm in this video alone, I wrote the paper together with my co-authors Weibert from Germany, Debora Leal from Brazil, Randall from the UK, and Volker Wulf from Germany. I am also from Germany, and all of us work at the University of Siegen in Germany. So the paper reports on a participatory design project addressing issues of migration and arrival, such as finding language classes, education or work, accessing healthcare, and general orientation in a new environment. It doesn't talk much, however, about the tools that we developed, but rather about the process of developing them. For the project, we opted for a participatory design approach, both for practical reasons, but also for political ones. We wanted to create space within the project for emancipatory dialogue between the participants, as inspired by the idea of agonistic participatory design. We involved precarious migrants, but crucially also voluntary and professional supporters, such as volunteers who might teach language classes, but often also accompany people to all kinds of administrative appointments, helping out with asylum process and application, and professional supporters such as maybe educational advisors. The project ended officially in October 2019, after running for 3 years. And since then, the tools have been taken over by civic organizations in the 2 cities that we worked at, and are maintained by voluntary and professional efforts with only minimal involvement of us researchers. The core of the paper and its main contribution is a reflection on the process of participation in this heterogeneous group and how participation came to be challenged, despite the success of the design efforts and the tools, as we understand a success since they continue to be maintained and used even 2 years after the end of the project. So these challenges to participation, we argue, are related to relations of care as formulated by Tronto or Bella Casa, relations of care that existed between our participants, but also included us as researchers and designers and those who convened for this project. The paper adds to the growing canon of work in our discipline that investigates issues of migration, but also to the participatory design literature as a whole, by offering a critical reflection on the hurdles of participation in specific contexts. Our project had several partners from the get-go, some of them included already in the writing phase of the proposal. Most importantly, these included a development company who did the technical work and a loose network of volunteers in one of the 2 cities who had a very strong interest in developing an online presence for themselves and a place to share everything they had learned volunteering over the years before the project started. So participation in our project then took several different forms and took place in different forums. In both places, in both cities, we tried to organize open meetings and invited through our networks of partners in various languages. The meetings were running throughout the project, and in City A, for a large amount of the time, at least taking place even weekly. In the other city, they were taking place monthly. We organized a wide range of activities in response to the wishes of our participants. So the meetings included art workshops, visiting theater plays, bike rides, just eating ice cream in the park, or we invited experts on housing or education to our meetings to kind of be able to hold a small presentation and answer specific questions of our participants. And all of this, of course, in addition to discussions we had about the difficulties of arriving and the possibilities to address them in design. In the paper, we describe the challenges to participation along 4 dimensions. These are differences in motivation to participate, power imbalances that existed between participants, conflicts that occurred, and differences in culture. So people differed quite significantly in their motivation to participate. Volunteers were largely kind of driven by idealism to shape social change. Professionals were also driven by idealism, but also by a work ethic. After all, this is kind of part of their daily work. Precarious migrants, however, were also driven often by more practical, very specific concerns that concerned the situation that they found themselves in. The project therefore provided an opportunity to maybe practice German, ask questions about education, such as how to deal with the university if you want to start studying, or where to find educational training, vocational training, or translating specific official letters that they might have received from an administrative office. There were also significant power differences when it came to making design decisions. Volunteers and professionals often knew the system in Germany much better than those who were new in the country. And this knowledge was crucial when to decide how to address issues of, for example, how to position yourself in the German education system, to know kind of what the next step is for you if you want to go studying and who to speak to. Volunteers in City A also felt strong ownership over the website, which influenced their power to make decisions, as they had declared right from the start that they would maintain the website, that it was theirs, and they would keep on running it after the project ended, which was important to us. Developers had technical knowledge no one else had, so they had more power when it comes to technical design decisions. But also social status and security, such as, for example, the status of your asylum process, determined how comfortable participants were to take political positions or take controversial standpoints in discussions. If they felt, for example, uncomfortable, as one person said, or unsure about how the person on the other side of the conversation would receive their position, they sometimes prefer to not engage in political discussions. There was also conflict between participants in our group. For example, there was conflict about the Kurdish situation in the Middle East, which made participation difficult or even hurtful for some, and we had to find ways together to overcome this. There were also differences in culture, as I mentioned, for example, differences in how the nature of the project was understood. Some people thought, for example, its job. It requires, therefore, tight, efficient workshops with concrete outcomes taking place in professional settings, ideally also during work hours, as they might have to convince their superiors that it's worth their time to participate. But others preferred meeting in a cafe, maybe after work, in a more informal atmosphere, where it was easier to have kind of more relaxed, informal, personal conversations rather than a more formalized work atmosphere. All these differences, we argue in the paper, boil down to differences in caring for and caring about. So some people cared for migrants, as for example the volunteers and the professionals too, but precarious migrants themselves cared about the practical and specific difficulties they were facing while trying to make themselves at home in a new place. So although care was a crucial resource in the project, that supported the ongoing maintenance and motivated this maintenance, to a certain extent unequal relationships of care existed also between participants. Both Toronto and Murphy have highlighted the dangers of care, of undemocratic forms of care and unequal relations of care, and this is also to a certain extent what we see in our project. These specific unequal relationships then made it difficult to realize the emancipatory and democratic as well as practical aims of participation. Crucially, these relations do not only exist between volunteer and professional supporters and precarious migrants, but also involve us as researchers and designers of the project, as the project as a whole can be understood to care for migrants. One of the main takeaways from our paper then, we hope, is a call for greater attention to our own potential roles in undemocratic forms of care, as HCI and CSCW projects continue to engage and intervene with issues of social justice and marginalization, trying to make a difference similar to our own project. The paper does not offer a solution to how to overcome these challenges. There is certainly literature to draw from where we might find hints, but I would also be very excited to speak to anybody who is interested about this at the conference. Thank you very much for listening and look forward to our conversations.